Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and this is going to be a really cool battle. I don't play too many of these. This is going to be a Napoleon siege, and it is going to be on an Ottoman fortress up on the hilltop here. So we have a Russian and an Austrian force laying siege to it, and the shelling is commencing. I have two unicorns facing off against the opponent to watch my build here. So the unicorns, one of them is going to be unlimbering, or relimbering I should say, in order to get a better angle of fire on the opponent. This one is getting a couple shots off on the Nizam Jadid up there. Meanwhile, my main force is going to be approaching Opashani, Russian Jaegers, and Musketeers. Hidden over in the forest, I do have a couple more infantry units. The Simonovsky Life Guard, which are an excellent force for melee. So that's my main assault. I have two more Musketeers flanking on the left, three Musketeers flanking on the right. The Ottoman player has a lot of these Azars, cheap units, some Janissaries ringing around the perimeter, so he has a lot of these guys in a good position to avoid fire from our guns. But over here there's been a massive assault from the Ottomans pushing forward, trying to seize our guns on this flank. So the Austrian player is actually going to send forth some of his cavalry. He's managed to charge this blob in the back, which is good. He hit up some of the swords, which are going to be very important to take out. And then from this side, he's going to be charging with the German grenadiers. What I would have done is use actually the grenades in this engagement, but perhaps he thought timing was of the essence. And the grenadiers are actually very strong in melee, so they're going to be moving up. Meanwhile, this is going to buy more time for the grenadiers to move up. Other forces start pushing up. And the Austrian player has a ton of German fusiliers trying to push up. The enemy, if we can zoom in on the fortress right there, is manning the cannons, and so they're shooting down, with their barrels straight into this massive group of infantry. So this means we really need to push forward quickly, which is, I guess, why the Ottoman player decided to charge forward, knowing that they had to delay this as much as possible. Looks like he's going to get another charge off into the rear, but these Nizam Jadid infantry, the rifles, are still in square, so we're not going to be getting very far. But by keeping them in square, it is keeping them from getting proper shots off against us. Grenadiers are down to 15 men, just not doing too well. It looks like that's why. Two of the, there was a Banshee Bazook and a Semi-Janissary, so that's a lot of melee infantry. So there goes our forces going to be melting away. But we have brought up some reserves. Hungarian Grenadiers, presumably holding fire to not shoot their friends in the back, but they should unload soon. These Banshee Bazooks are going to be the first wave to charge into us. It looks like we should be able to beat him back, but man, they really need to send in more reserves on this front, because look, more of these swordsmen are charging down. And this is an epic, actually, view of the fort. In the foreground, more Ottomans pouring into this fight, so it may be a focus of the Ottoman player to knock out the Austrians. So he's going to be washing up against us. He's almost going to be at the guns positioned back here, and this is really what we need to break down these walls. Otherwise, you're left kind of with hooks to throw up against the walls here, and then you walk up, and if you don't have an entry elsewhere, then you're just going to walk up to murderous fire from the inside, to counter charges from melee infantry. So we really need our guns up and running. My main force is continuing to push up. Thankfully, there isn't much returning fire, so as my troops start to push up the hill, slowly but surely, it takes a long time to get up here. We're not going to be taking enemy incoming fire. There are a couple units up on top, but most of the enemy defensive force is going to be pouring out to meet the Austrians in the field. These Nizam Jadid have a perfect firing angle at these units up here. I'm not quite sure why they're not firing. It's like a couple of them are caught reloading. But if I were this player, I would have sent more of my guys to man the cannons up here. Look, this would have been 5 cannons, perfect position to just shoot up these German fusiliers. But nonetheless, I mean, these Semi Janissaries are going to tear it up in close quarters combat. This is what they're meant for. Give them a little bit of supporting fire, and they could probably destroy this entire Ottoman army. Austrian army. We're still fighting in this bloody grove on this side. Now some of the fire going to be coming in. Do we have a howitzer on our side? Yes, we do have a 7-pound howitzer finally deploying. So this is what the Austrian forces desperately need, is to be able to take out those heavy forces. But it looks like one of those bombs coming dangerously close to hitting one of our own troops. So we really need to focus fire. on these semi-janissaries. This is pretty cool. I love this fortress is so cool. Just the star fort and the intricacies of the terrain. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we need in Total War Warhammer. Can you imagine if the Empire had star forts and you had green skins, flying units attacking this? I mean, this would not be hard to pull off. Even making the approach to cities something like this with big, you know, cliffs, different approaches like this, make it way more intricate, make it hilly, make it, you know, make nooks like this, hilltops, which are key to securing for your artillery positions. All kinds of cool stuff they desperately need for Warhammer. I have no idea why they dumbed it down. In any case, we've gotten ourselves smashed up here by the cavalry mounted rifles. They're also going to be shooting at our guys who have managed to get up on top of the wall. But like I said, the second we get up here, we get countercharged by healthy infantry units. Meanwhile, we can watch the approach on this front where the enemy riflemen are going to be firing down at our guys. But I have a ton of dudes pouring their bodies into this fight. Now, one of the downsides of this is I do have my artillery trying to fire up over, and my target was to hit these nice juicy clumps of infantry. Haven't done much damage, but most of the shots are actually going to start to fall short, and they're going to come dangerously close to peppering my units. So I have to be careful about that. One of them here seemingly hitting the militia. I'm having a very hard time taking out those guys on the walls. It just does no damage, apparently. But can you imagine if we had this type of combat with orcs down there and Empire troops firing down? This is the kind of stuff I really hope we're able to see in the future. And it's one of the biggest lacking parts of Total War Warhammer, I believe, is the sieges. Pushing up on this flank, I was able to force the enemy back inside. You can see them streaming back through the gate. They did not want to have to deal with my forces. I have 2 musketeers or 3 musketeers. I thought this was a lifeguard, but no, it's just a simple musketeer force. And so we're going to be locking down the enemy, preventing them from pushing forward. And what I'm going to try and do is isolate certain sectors. So, for instance, here I'm starting to break down the walls. I'm ready on this flank to perhaps start a swarm. And I'm going to start to, again, unlimber my guns and start inching them forward because I don't have the best line of fire. I really want to hit these juicy targets hitting back here, but somehow the angle is just not working out for me. For the Austrian player, looks like they have finally silenced the attacker or the defenders here. And this is like a Civil War era battle, which is corpses littering, you know, little round top, so to speak, in this case. So we're going to be waiting it out, allowing our artillery to now start battering down the walls, and our force that was previously up here just got, you know, eviscerated. So now we're going to be focusing on the walls. We've set up in the artillery positions that we want, and so now finally we can begin the artillery and bombardment phase of the siege. And I have these awesome unicorn guns, which are really great in open field battles. They can hammer at infantry positions, but in the case like this, perhaps it would have been better for just some straight up artillery, because the exploding shells just not doing the damage we need to. It's going to take a long time to puncture these walls. Then again, they are super big walls. Oh, what do I hear? Aha. So looks like we're going to get our grappling hooks ready. And why didn't they do something like this for Empire? Or sorry, for Warhammer. I mean, if Empire could pull it off, why couldn't Warhammer pull off something as simple as this? Give the orcs grappling hooks. Give the, you know, vampires or, you know, spiders or other goblins the ability to climb walls like in Shogun. The pocket gliders is just so arcadey. I wish they would get back to some of the realism of, you know, that we have in this case. My guys are going to start to push up. I'm a little wary to tell them to move across this area because it is getting torn to shreds. And just as I get up here, the enemy is going to be countercharging us. So in the distance, look at all those swords charging up. They're going to meet our musketeers up on the walls as I start to get up. Just like I said, this is going to be very hard to do. You get a couple units up and all of a sudden they're going to be overwhelmed and surrounded. So there's not much I can do. I mean, my guys can try and fire from these positions, but I really have no line of sight on the enemy. As you've been seeing over here, I have the best line of sight you could imagine, and still this force only having lost 12 men after the entire time shooting at them. So there's really no way up here besides shooting it with artillery, and so that's why some of my Russians are going to be coming back down. They know that is not where they want to be. up to 66% damage, so I'm hoping to create a hole in here, and I do have some uncontested musketeers up on top. I'm going to try and get them in a position where they can start firing down into the enemy ranks. Ooh, and it looks like we did blow up another one here, so my ally doing a much greater job here with the 12 pounder. Probably should have done this. This is much easier for focus firing on the walls. Meanwhile, the howitzer here, they staked it up. That's a good idea, just to make sure it's secured. It's going to be targeting this wall over here. Infantry going to start staging. And now we're going to start pulling up with some Hungarian Fusiliers behind the smoke and rubble, where we're going to get ready to send some men into action. On this front, I've deployed my musketeers. We are standing atop a crumbling wall, 69% damage. So what I was hoping to do is actually bait the enemy into committing here. And what I was hoping to do is, you see how many troops they're having in the backlog. I was going to hope to take, a 2-for-1 with them, continue to focus this, and maybe collapse the whole wall with both of us in there. But that's only if my troops can last long enough. It looks like they're going to be just getting slaughtered once again. The Russians are good in melee defense and melee attack, but still not holding up. More troops going to be mounting, mounting the walls. It'd be really cool if in the future they get to the point where you could actually have, like, small squad-based tactics for units that get up on the wall. So for instance, a couple guys start laying down suppressive fire, more guys coming up here, a couple go ahead and, this would be too much realism, but the ability to grab these cannons, turn them out, and start firing into the fort itself would be really cool. A couple more of our guys going to be hoisting themselves on this front. Ooh, and we did destroy another wall, so we're going to get ready for that assault there. Going to start getting some firing on either side. My troops, as they deploy, are going to get shot up by the Azars, which are kind of irregular, loose formation units. This is not good, so as my guys start getting suppressed, what are they running from? Well, there's swordsmen up on the walls, and so we can watch those units. So they're going to be running all the way around, chasing my guys away. So that is why I'm having such a hard time clearing these walls. All the Ottoman infantry just going to be beating me back. I'm not even able to shoot away the defenders, so there's really not much choice for me but to sit tight and wait for a hole to be created, and it is taking a long time with these unicorns. So I'm going to sacrifice another one of the musketeers. My other force here is going to try and deploy. What it's trying to do, and I did give it a movement order here, was to deploy in this position so that I could start getting shots on these Samnite Janissaries, because what the Samnites are trying to do is, well, camp out this little area here. But once again, the unit controls being a little gimmicky. These men are not going to fire until they're completely lined up, which means the Azars can pick them off, and it means that my force in the back here, oh, actually looks like I did finally take out the wall, so that's going to be the little break I needed. But here you have triple swordsmen going to break this force before I can even, I think, get my troops to line up. Let's see if they do get a volley off. The Austrians here teaching me, Windbush Jaegers, that, guys, this is how you fire. The Russians obviously not taking heed of those actions. And what this makes me think is actually a Dan Carlin series that I watched on the First World War, Ghosts of the Ostfront. Very much recommend you talk about it. It's, as I said, about the First World War, Eastern Front, Russians against Germans, and the reason I mention that is because a portion of that really talks about the Russian chain of command, where they started getting very, very brutal at a portion of the war. Just the complete surprise early on in the campaign meant that Stalin was, well, the Russians were sent reeling, kicked back, and Stalin had to enforce draconian rules, not a step back, comrade type of mentality. And what happened is there are purges throughout the ranks, and what would happen if you didn't hold your ground, if you sacrificed any ground, if you yielded in any way, the general, the officer could be held in contempt, he could be executed. And so what happened is you had troops who would not think for themselves, officers who would not think for themselves, scared for their own lives. They would follow orders to a T. And so as you saw my guys here, they had orders to station themselves on the walls, but not orders to fire. And so the officers did not tell their men to fire. And what Dan Carlin talks about in this podcast, in I believe it's episode 2 or 3, he talks about literally there would be times where massive amounts of troops would be told to advance along a front. And, on a map, you would have generals giving orders from well behind the battle line saying, I want this division to move up here, I want this division to seize the hill, I want this division to cross the river. And so what ended up happening, according to this anecdote that Dan Carlin shares, is that there's a regiment that's told to, the general, he gave the order, you must cross the river, no excuses. But the officer who gets to the river, it's rapids, they have no way to cross the river, they weren't given any supplies, they have no rafts, and so this officer, not wanting to be executed for not taking, that crossing, has no fire, no one's opposing him, only nature in his way, and he orders his men to swim across the rapids, and they end up losing the entire unit, essentially, in these rapids. And this just goes to show the sheer craziness of what happened in that war. And that was a bit of a tangent of what happened, just seeing these Russian troops not firing, taking orders, literally. But if this is something that interests you, I definitely recommend checking out Dan Carlin's series, Ghosts of the Ostfront, on the First World War. And if you like the second, even more of the first, Ghosts of the Ostfront, what am I saying? It is on the Second World War, excuse me. If you want his series on the First World War, that is going to be Blueprint for Armageddon, which is equally good, very, very entertaining, but very, very depressing. I listened to that series and came out just, man, I needed to take a break from that after a while. It was super depressing. So First World War stuff, definitely, history buffs, very interesting period of history. And for me, the death, misery, and all that stuff is very, very sobering. Very lucky to think that we live in this day and age, but it's just, it's always interesting to me to see what conditions man will put themselves in, and the extent to which the human body, the human mind, the conditions and the horrors that we can deal with. And in that, that's what Dan Carlin talks about, the extremes of the human condition, man's inhumanity to man. And in those extreme cases, you see the brilliance of humanity shine through, the heroism, the camaraderie, but also the worst of man. And so that's why I think history and military warfare can be sobering, but also a lesson into kind of what it means to be human. But anyways, this is a big tangent. This is starting off from a bloody assault. So what you've been seeing me is kind of looking around where I've gotten clobbered on this flank, but it doesn't matter. It's a 2 versus 1 scenario, so we're just here, as the Russians always do, and that is churning out men, sending them into the fight. So I've seized this area, and now what I have is musketeers, but they're going to be reinforced by another group, and we're going to slowly start chipping away at these Smeat Janissaries. I'm going to start pulling in some of the heavy hitters, so my Semenovsky Life Guard and my Grenadiers, so they're going to start pulling up. We've been able to pull the enemy away from this front, get a lot of them caught in the mix, and now I have free units, finally, around the flank. My Austrian friends are going to start pushing through here. We did send a couple into the mix, got charged by cavalry, got charged by infantry, and it looks like we sought refuge inside the enemy tower here. And so from within this tower, we're going to be actually getting shots off at the enemy, but the lower area is going to be countercharged actually by enemies trying to reclaim this area. So this is a ridiculous battle taking place. My lifeguard foot here tearing it up, but they are somewhat being shot in the flank, so you can see all the corpses here on my right flank just being due to the clever positioning of our opponent. So he definitely knows what he's doing. He's holding, to the last man here, definitely making me pay for it with my life and the lives of the Russian foot soldiers. We have Hungarian Grenadiers going to be charging into the mix, and what should normally be done is not necessarily getting into combat. They should have used their grenades once again, and this is normally supposed to be cover for more troops to be pushing in, which is going to be the case with Hungarian Fusiliers. A couple of my Russians came back from retreating, so they're going to be pushed back into the fight. But look at what I've pulled up here. I now have my Grenadiers in the mix, and so I'm going to show my ally how it's done with these Grenadiers. We're going to get up really close. We're going to switch to our secondary weapons, which is going to be these grenades. And so from the point of view of the Azars, they're going to be firing away very happily, and all of a sudden they're going to see the Russians priming, tossing these little grenades in the mix. Ding, 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 ding. And boom. So it doesn't do as much damage as you'd think. It's mostly like a morale shock to this unit. You would have thought that would slaughter that force, but anyway, it's going to take the morale down, it's going to debuff them, and then here come my Grenadiers, which are also good in close quarters combat, charging into the Azars, and the Azars are not going to be good in close quarters. one of the few units from the Ottoman army here that is going to be able to be taken out by my men. Lifeguard foot, great stats. Going to be standing somewhat toe-to-toe with these pretty tired and exhausted Janissaries. Oh god, more troops charging out of the building into our units. So we are being beaten back, I would say, on this front. We've somewhat lost it. My lifeguard foot has been broken, but we have pushed through the center. The enemy infantry here has been taken out rather costly. This was like 2-3 musketeer forces down in the mix. I have some of my musketeers charging the enemy, holding the center. But the Semnovsky lifeguard, these guys are the tippy top of the Russian troops, and so watch their great tactics as they take out these remaining very tired semi-Janissaries, and they were exhausted and shattered with that last blow. So now I can pull down with my infantry. This building is still kind of contested. Looks like the enemy has retaken the top. We do have some men left. Oh, they're at the bottom. So this is, man, I do not want to be a unit fighting in the close quarters of this this building. Troops getting shot left and right. You know, stabbings taking place in the center. There's crazy action in there. I've redeployed some of my musketeers. What I'm going to try and do is actually focus fire. I'm going to change my target to be on the right side over there. What I'm trying to do is free up my grenadiers who have taken a beating. My Semnovsky are going to be pulled down. Artillery going to be firing up on these Samit Janissaries who have cleaned up again another flank. But now that I have my general, Prince Datoli, in, he's going to be pulled into this position. I'm going to actually charge forward with my Semnovsky. What we're going to be doing is a nice, heroic Russian charge. And it's going to come into this group of units that has been roughly, you know, beat up. And now with this final cavalry charge, it should be the final blow decisively here. Yep, there you go. They're breaking. I'm going to be careful with the stakes and make sure I pull out to that side. And there you go. We broke them. Grenadiers still alive. There are a couple more Samit Janissaries. They're winded. 71 men left. 70. But I have Semnovsky lifeguards and musketeers, so the lifeguards themselves could take them out. And now it's just a case of overwhelming numbers. So we're going to seize this position. My artillery finally getting some nice shots off at the enemy in the distance. And so they're going to try and pull themselves back down. Some of them had to rappel back down, come through the gate. And they're going to be met with a lot of infantry. But still, for a 2 versus 1, considering there was only one army defending, look, we've got almost nothing. My ally has, what, 1 infantry unit left? First regiment of the Emperor's Own and his general, that's it. I have 2 healthy units and 2 scrap units, and then the artillery, that's it. So our opponent did a really, really good job, I would have to say, in this battle. And the Ottomans, pretty hard to do poorly when the enemy comes right into melee range with you. I think if he'd been a little bit more conservative with his assaults outside of the walls, he probably could have done way more damage. But nonetheless, it was an epic fight, an epic stand, 2 versus 1. Don't get to see that too often. And yeah, I think I'm definitely going to start breaking up the Warhammer content with some other games. So let me know what type of other games you'd like to see. Is it going to be Napoleon Total War? Is it going to be Empire, Shogun, Rome 2, Attila, or even older stuff, Medieval 2? So definitely leave your recommendations for stuff below, and definitely make sure you check out Dan Carlin's Ghost of the Ostfront, Eastern Front of World War II, definitely worth it, and also the Blueprint for Armageddon, which is going to be about the First World War. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, see you in the next one. Peace out.